Good evening and welcome to Chromatic Chimera, the channel where everything's made up and the XP never matters. And tonight it's Table Talkies night, and it's a pretty special one. You can see that my screen is full of a lot more camera boxes than usual. I have the cast of Critical Bits with me tonight. They are a podcast, a comedy podcast, I believe, yeah.
Golly,
And
we hope so.
and honestly, I don't know too much about the podcast yet, but I know that it has something to do with corn dogs. So,
Yes, yes,
It's close.
so
Yeah, that's
if
pretty much
that
it.
is accurate.
so, thank you all for being here with me tonight. I know it's a pain to schedule with so many people. So thank you for making time in your lives for this.
Yeah, Joel, what's it like to schedule a lot of people, Mr. Live Play episodes with what, 33 characters?
It was 40 this year, right?
Come do it.
So
Not at once. Not at
born
once.
from a riff, we'll just get this out of the way very quickly. Born from a riff in the early season is the concept of Spider Day in our show. It is a holiday that was created for no real purpose as a throwaway. It then became a 36-person, I believe, charity streaming event and 3-hour-long show that Joel put together, from which have spawned more shows of this scale with this number of people.
Wow.
Spider Day is April 17th. Please come check it. Yeah. But that's its own plug. And I like it. It's fun because Joel likes to talk. Joel hates to talk about how many people it is.
All right. Well, why don't we get started off by going around and kind of letting you all introduce yourselves? So we can go in any order, however you feel comfortable.
I'll go first.
Oh, you want to go first? Yeah,
I'm gonna talk over Joel. I'm Shannon. I'm a video essayist on the channel Structure Movies. I also do the series Scanline with H Bomber Guy. I do like media analysis and film reviews, and I play Kim on Critical Bits, and I'm the film correspondent for Struggle Session, a leftist pop culture podcast. And that's most of the stuff that I do.
Yeah, I'm Joel. I'm the GM of Critical Bits, and I'm also the editor of it. And I've done a lot of comedy stuff throughout the years, and for work I do freelance video work. Back whenever the world needed public events to be filmed, and then now I sit in front of a computer and hope that everything goes back. But like I said, I am the GM and the editor of the podcast.
Hi, I'm Shelby. I play Alex on Critical Bits, and that's pretty much it.
I'm Paul Byron. I am on Twitter. I'm an Atlanta comedian back when, again, public events used to be a thing, but the before times were crazy, right, y'all? But I play Jerry on Critical Bits, aka Sad Sack.
I like calling it the before times. It makes
The
it more.
It does
full.
make it seem more dramatic. I like it.
Oh, but I'm never gonna let a stranger touch me again. It's gonna be amazing.
Yeah. Honestly, it's been a wild couple
Weeks. It's been 2 weeks since we've really been all having a thing about this.
It's
Just a
really,
really-
it's not long
boy.
enough
No.
for, and too long. 10 days, 2 weeks. I don't know. Oh boy.
So speaking of things that have a very short timeline, the show.
I mean, we're here to mostly just have a conversation, so I don't mind. But we'll start off with an icebreaker question, and we can go around in any order. And I would like to know what got you into nerddom. Obviously, you run an actual play podcast, so I would like to just assume that you're nerds. But how did you get into the nerdy stuff in life?
I just want to point out that I'm a very jockey bro here.
Okay.
All
with-
right.
Did you
with
wanna
these
leave?
with
I
these
can
Game of
kick you out.
Thrones hand painted drawings in the background.
Oh God.
You want
really?
to start, Joel?
Yeah. Well, I first started getting into nerd stuff when I was 9. I'm 32 now, and so I put this together the other day. My gaming career can legally drink. Which is that's kind of a blow to how time works for me now. It's terrible. But yeah, I started playing D&D when I was like 9. I had no clue what I was doing. My older brother, who's about 4 years older than me, got me into tabletop gaming, and it just kind of went from there. Throughout high school, I played a lot more tabletop. I LARPed from like freshman to like senior year, and then have been heavily involved in nerdy stuff ever since. And I love it, and I especially love like tabletop role playing game in particular. Out of all the nerdy stuff I'm into, it's definitely been like one of my top favorite things. So it's very fun to run a podcast of it now.
Yeah, I've been cool ever since I was like a kid. Like I don't think I've just been like really, really cool. I don't know. I haven't that's a hard answer, like a hard question to answer. I didn't get into D&D or like role playing games until college, I think. When it's because it's so hard to find someone who knows all the rules if you don't have the time to go back, which I can talk about that in the future as far as like, hey, like I think D&D is very intimidating sometimes, and yeah, there's some other games that maybe are a little bit more accessible. We'll talk about that later. Like I don't know, masks. But anyways, I had always wanted to play D&D, and I started playing it in college, and now I can't stop, and I just keep doing it forever, and I absolutely love it. I've played just a bunch of a lot of D&D, a lot of other systems that I'm trying out. But yeah, no, it's just been ever like since I can remember. I'm just very into media, very into movies. And yeah, also played a lot of murder mysteries in college also. So that's technically LARPing, I guess.
Those are fun.
I would
That
say
was
it
fun.
technically is LARPing.
Shelby and I go ahead.
Gateway drug to LARPing at very least.
It is literally LARPing. It is live action role play. I've never been the murderer, by the way. So that's how you know you can trust me.
Yeah, Shelby and I used to live together, and we would get these box sets of murder mystery dinner parties that come with like before we got really into or at least before I got really into tabletop stuff, it would come with like invitations you would mail your friends with like a recommended wardrobe for their character, what their basic character outline, and you would sort of go through the whole game, and there would be aspects you had to try to hide about yourself and reveal about other people. Oh, wow. It was super fun.
They're very fun. I have one right over there if anybody wants to play.
The series is called How to Host a Murder, but you have to be careful because they were written in the 80s, and some of them are like super racist.
Some of them are racist.
Yeah, there are more. I think there are more modern versions, but you can get like a set of like for $10 or $15 with all of that stuff with it. But you kind of have to be careful because some of them are very, very dated and like really upsetting. But yeah, when I was a kid, like growing up, my parents were both kind of nerdy, and my mom went to conventions in the 70s, and she got me really into horror, and both my parents got me into film kind of, and I got really, really into anime and video games at a very young age. And I played tabletop online a little bit with my online friends around 2010, but it wasn't until much later that my friend group started a Curse of Strahd campaign in like 2017 that Shelby was also in. I just loved it, and I got super into it, and it was a pretty easy transition from playing like JRPGs to understanding the mechanics of the game. And I played a couple other games, but it wasn't really until Joel started Critical Bits that I started playing a lot more games outside of D&D, just like guesting on other podcasts or playing Powered by the Apocalypse like we do on the show. So,
well, I guess I should start by saying that when Optimus Prime died in the 1987 Transformers the movie, I wept. So I was like, oh, that's it. Oh, I suffer from the raised by cartoons and Star Trek compunction that we seem to all have, or a lot of people seem to have, and that carried on into the adjacent systems of nerddom that I didn't really get into D&D until like college, because guess what? Not everyone has like a wide, disparate friend group with a lot of time to learn a weird arcane rule system. And as a result, you picked that. Yeah, that was where I ran into that crew. So
I just looked it up, Paul. I was just born a little bit after that.
I wasn't born.
Are we dunking on Paul right now?
You don't.
I'm down to
that
dunk
I've
on Paul.
outlived you is not really a problem I'm having.
You don't want me to say my age. You really don't.
An old timer is something you'll never be if you don't shut your mouths.
I am probably slightly older than Joel's gaming career.
We have a whole spectrum here.
I'll say that's what's been very interesting producing this show. Like, Paul's a little older than me, and then Shannon and Shelby are around the same age, but and a few years younger than me. And so I keep thinking because I have been alive for 32 years, everyone else is 32. I'm just like, yeah, everybody is this. And then like, so
Even the elderly.
Yeah, we have like a fan run Discord, that's fairly active. And then sometimes people like talking there. There's like a line in our show because Mask is about teenage superheroes, and there's an NPC in the first episode who says he needs more teen friends, and we talk about like it's a joke, and then we're like, no one should say that. And like someone joined our Discord, and they're like, how do I get more teen friends? We're like, don't do that. You should do that. And they're like, oh, by the way, I'm 19. It was like,
Oh,
okay, well, I guess you can get teen friends. And then
we just don't advocate for it.
Well, that's what
as
clicked
us.
with me. I was just like, oh, you know what? A lot of the content that I liked in like my late teens to like, early to mid to late 20s was made by like 30 and 40-year-olds. And to me, I was like, yeah, this is just people my age making. And I was like, oh yeah, a lot of my fans are people that are now like, a good like 10 plus years younger than me on average. Not everybody. I'm not saying, there's obviously people my age and older and stuff like that didn't do it, but that is kind of like a weird thing to get used to, especially too because I've been doing stand-up for like the last decade, and so I hadn't really done a lot of online stuff. So like translating from like, oh, well, I legally can't see anyone out at a stand-up show that's not at least 21. So it's been a weird transition.
Oh man, we just have a lot of teen friends, Joel.
We do not.
We just got. We just have so many teen friends.
We have teen fans.
We've got teen fans. Oh no, that fails. No, we've got.
We don't know any teens. I've never.
I've never met a teen in my life. Yeah,
as
Teenagers
soon as
intimidate me.
I was
13,
born
this
I fell
age.
asleep and I woke up when I was 20.
Yeah. Funny how that works.
So tell me a little bit about Critical Bits. So it's an actual play, but it's not Dungeons and Dragons. And you said it was a Powered by the Apocalypse system. Can you tell me more about the system that you use and how that's different from maybe 5e and why you chose that system?
Yeah, well, I had approached Shannon. I don't remember how long before we officially started the podcast, but they were over at my house for a nice little brunch, and I had just told them, I was like, hey, I want to start an actual play. You were like one of my top choices of like someone to start this with. So we were just looking for cast members, but one of the things I kind of said from the beginning, I just don't really want to do D&D. I do like D&D, but I it's very crunchy and a lot of math.
I fought hard for encumbrance and rations.
Yeah,
sleep deprivation.
It was tough. It was at the wire. We were.
Yeah, I really want to have most episodes be about. Now, do you have enough weight? Do you have enough? Like, can you carry all this weight?
Do you have components? Do you have the lint?
Yeah,
do you have
your
the
ammo,
newt size?
your arrows.
I kind of came in.
My nail's not copper. We can't make the boat.
I kind of came in saying, like I wanted to run the show, like not in like a rude way, but I was just, I'm gonna GM, and I really want to be a Powered by the Apocalypse system because about a year and a half, maybe 2 years before I decided to start this podcast, I had gotten introduced by Powered by the Apocalypse, played I think Apocalypse World first, Dungeon World a little bit, and then I did a couple of campaigns of Masks. But I just was like, yeah, this is the system that I really want to run. And what was it? Because it was between Mask,
Monster of the Week,
and there was the vampire Urban Shadows. That's what it was. Yeah,
one of the hornier ones.
They were all. That was one of the. I don't know if we want to. I mean, that was one of the deciding factors when we were talking about like, hey, what game do we want to play? We wanted to play Powered by the Apocalypse. We went through all of them. A lot of horny Powered by the Apocalypse games. It was really interesting.
And sexuality may have a role in the tabletop role playing in the tabletop environment. It was not what we wanted to do with our show.
The four of us were it was pretty easy too, because even without the system, we kind of laid down some of the ground rules, and we didn't want to get overly sexual. And then also we didn't want anything to do with any kind of like sexual assault or like abuse, even as like, because it was just the thing. It was like, even as like a theme where that's something like a bad guy, just I don't want to do it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want that to be in the world. And that was like a pretty easy like, oh, okay, everyone's in favor of this, great, let's move on.
And that's why session 0 is so important, just to talk about your expectations and what you want to do and get to know each other and say, hey, what do we want to be?
Be real clear though, do not record and then subsequently produce and release session 0. Do that
unless you want to.
People can do that. We have, I stand by that. If some people like session 0, some people want to put it out. I don't want to do another one for a recorded show for us, but that's just how I like to like tell our story. and the narrative. I don't think it's a bad thing. But yeah, so we just kind of, I wanted to do a podcast. I approached Shannon about it. And this is in no way of dig at Paul or Shelby. We had just asked a few other people first, but it ended up like we didn't even record any other episodes with anybody. It just kind of worked out to where it was the four of us. And then, like, you know, Shannon was saying, them and Shelby met in college. I knew Paul through stand-up comedy over the last couple of years. Shannon and I knew each other because I used to run a video contest, like a monthly video contest. But none of us as a group had ever played together.
Just me and Shelby.
Yeah, just
and we didn't know Paul at all, and you didn't. It was just like, it was a gamble.
Well, also because we went
That's
into
what
it,
everyone calls me.
Well, we went into it talking about not even saying that, like, if the first one sucks, we'll kick the two of you out. We all kind of agreed, like, yeah, if we record our first episode and it doesn't really stick, but we feel like it's a good group and we just need to redo it, we'll just scrap that episode to record another one and just move on. But like, our episode 1 is the very first time any of us as a group sat down at a table together. And I actually only Shannon and Shelby had played with each other in this group. Outside of that, there was no other pairing. So it really was like a happenstance, like, gathering of 4 very like-minded people.
Yeah, it was the second time I'd ever hung out with Paul or Joel after the session 0. But Joel, what is Critical Bits?
It's an actual play body horror.
It's America's favorite.
It's a slapstick body horror comedy podcast with anti-fascist and queer themes and tones, with the heavy emphasis of a love of corn dogs.
See, I knew corn dogs were going to come into this. I knew it.
They do. You got it.
So, how do you marry comedy and body horror? Because that sounds like a very unique combination.
Something that's very interesting. So I'm a huge horror fan. I know that Shannon's a huge horror fan. I know that Joel's a huge horror fan, even though Joel didn't know that he was a huge horror fan until he started this podcast. He was like, "Oh, that's what that is."
I didn't know I liked body horror. I knew I liked horror. I didn't know body horror was its own thing.
A lot of people are learning names for what they are in the last 10 years or so.
Some labels, but I think that. And again, Shannon, you probably, as the film theorist, know a lot more about like marrying comedy and horror, but I do think that they go surprisingly well together. And that's like a lot of horror comedy genres out there. And we do play it a little bit more. It does get legitimately like horrifying. It's very like objectively scary, but we do kind of play into it with a little bit of the comedy. But it's very bizarre, but I don't think that they're too, I think that they work really well together.
I think they're both transgressive, and you can be subversive with both of them. And I think, at least in my own life, like if I'm not seriously hurt, if I get hurt and it's just kind of weird and gross, I usually think it's funny. Or I think, like, you know, if it's like you get like a weird cut and you want to send a picture to your friend or something.
I've been on the receiving end of that.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of weird, strange
I'm
things.
So glad I'm not.
Or like, I opened my mailbox one day and it was like full of ants and ant larvae, and I think I immediately messaged Shelby. I was like, "This is awful. Do you want to see it?" I think it's that same kind of impulse, and I think
I do.
It's sort of Joel's good at kind of pacing the show out, and then like building tension and breaking tension, or finding humor, because a lot of it too, it's sort of anti-capitalist satire, or a lot of like the corn dog stuff. A lot of the show is about American consumerism and how horrible our chain restaurants are, just sort of turned up a lot, and it gets very dark, but that's the darkness born of our own experiences. But yeah, I think I'm very happy with how it works, and I'm very happy we were all on a very similar wavelength as far as our sensibilities, because it can be very easy when you're doing dark humor to just be edgy and nihilistic, which I hate. And I think we've done a really good job avoiding that too. Like, it's extremely, extremely rare where one of us is like, "How about we don't do that joke? How about let's cut that? That's bad." So.
I got all my edgelord comedy out of the way in my early 20s, and then I realized that it wasn't funny.
Yeah,
that really what happened. I did stand up for a couple of years, not like as much as I did for like, that wasn't like that. I think I was maybe doing like 1 or 2 shows a month for like a 2 or 3 years, and then went on a really crappy tour with some friends. And then after the tour ended, I literally was like, I don't think any of my jokes are funny, and I think I kind of hate all of the comedy I do, because all of it was, and like, I'm admitting this, like, it was just shitty shock humor I, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back. Like, I didn't get like racist or offensive, but none of it was like good or thought out. And I just didn't enjoy it. And then I scrapped like almost every single joke that I had been doing for the last couple of years, and then just started to like rewrite sets. And then I kind of like shifted over to like, not complete self-deprecating, but just more like silly, longer stories, kind of poking fun at myself, and got over the like, oh, you guys just don't get it. You're the fault. Your problem is the audience.
Were you
not mine.
offended?
I'm glad we met after that, Joel. I'm glad I never had to talk to you.
I stand by that. There's a bunch of people that like. I had an ex once where we were dating, and then her best friend's fiance said to dump me. I was like, whoa, what is happening? And she was like, yeah, he hates you. And I was like, who is he? And then I found out who it was. I was like, oh, that dude knew me in like my like late teens, early 20s. That guy has every right to hate me and think he hates me. And then later, like, became friends with him again. And he told me, he was like, yeah, I thought that you were a piece of shit. I was like, and you were right. It has
That's
since
gross.
changed. I was very sad and misdirected and had a lot of anger I was projecting out. So
So, when it comes to doing body horror in your game, how are you? What safety tools do you use to make sure that you're not going too far and you're not making anybody uncomfortable?
like I said, we talked a lot about, just kind of everyone's comfort zones on things and what, what we don't want to hit and things like that. And like I said, I think all of us have like a real good, we're not trying to attack anything that's like we definitely none of us want to swing down ever. Mm-hmm. So most all of the things like Shannon was saying with a lot of like the anti-capitalist stuff and just kind of like the horrors of the modern day world we live in, we attack a lot of stuff like that, and we kind of just focus on that. And then the body horror things, I try to not make it be where like the body horror within itself is like so gruesome and terrifying just because of what it is. It kind of sometimes lands a little funnier just because it's just like, yeah, it's weird and wacky, but it's also, somebody's like slipping on themselves as they keep growing. Like the very first time we had any of it come out was somebody had stretchy powers, like they could extension powers, and the storyline was like people had eaten corn dogs that were tainted with a thing to make their powers go out of control. So they were going to go save a teen, and then Paul just said like, oh yeah, there's somebody on Instagram whose like stretch powers are going haywire.
He was taking a selfie and the camera just
and so I just ran with that, and I was like, all right, cool, so that's what it is. You guys are going to this person's house, and then I started like talking about how it's just in like their whole body was enveloped in the house, and then I said the phrase, welcome to my boy labyrinth.
What?
Never
that's
been
where
the
it
same.
set the tone for the show.
Yeah.
I don't like that.
We didn't either, but here we are, 30
I'll say this
30
weirdly
something
enough,
I mean, I
there's a
love
bunch
it,
of
but I hate it.
a bunch of people have been like, I liked the show, and then episode 3 or 4, Joel said boy labyrinth. I love this show now. It's like, that's
It's to each their own. Honestly, for me, I think that it's, again, that session 0 is so important that you can talk about like, hey, what do you want to do? Like, where do we want to be? And I think that we're lucky enough to like, or not even lucky enough. Like, I think that we've built a relationship where we all feel comfortable calling each other out to the point where it's like, hey, like if Joel ever says something that's too far, or Shannon or Paul, like I feel confident to say like, hey, like either while we're recording or afterwards to be like, hey, like that didn't make me feel comfortable, or hey, I don't think that would happen. Even like little things like character decisions, or like even if outside the body horror aspect, because I've got a pretty high tolerance for like horrific things. But as far as like, oh hey, like I don't think my character would have done that, or I don't think this would have happened, or like this felt a little weird to me, I have never felt uncomfortable reaching out to Joel and saying like, hey, like can we edit this out, or like saying like stopping in the middle and saying like, hey, like here's what's going on. I do, Shannon, I remember like as far as safety tools, do you remember the name of that? Because there's so many good safety tools out there for role-playing games if you don't have that kind of relationship, or if you're playing with people who you're not friends with or who you don't know very well, or even like in a group of friends where it's sometimes uncomfortable to bring up those kinds of topics and like to say like, hey, I'm not comfortable with this. And so I don't remember the name of it right now.
I do.
Shannon,
well, like
what is, yeah.
Kiana S put them all compiled them all basically in a PDF, and I think they just redid it in like a different format or something. But I mean, it's like we didn't necessarily set out with specific safety tools. I think because we after the first couple episodes, we developed that rapport. But like our session 0 was basically doing like lines and veils, which is what you say, this is my hard line. I will not cross this. And then veils is like stuff that could be off screen. And we didn't like, if I was doing this over again, I might want to incorporate those sorts of like structured safety tools, especially if it was with people that I didn't know. But we were talking about like, I don't want there to be sex in this game. I don't want there to be sexual assault or child sexual assault ever. I don't want this certain stuff to happen, and kind of setting that line, because that is such a nasty thing to be taken off guard, like caught off guard during a game. And I think when we stream and play with other people, it's usually more lighthearted, and maybe we could be better about incorporating safety tools, and we haven't. But I think if we did anything more serious or darker or more gross, we would put more emphasis on that. But we were like just sort of fortunate enough to all be on the same wavelength. And there have been times on very, very minor stuff where, like I said, we'll message Joel or we'll just talk to each other during the game of like, hey, can we cut that? I'm not really comfortable with that, or let's not do that again. But luckily it hasn't been like an issue, and and I think we respect each other enough to not push back.
No, it's never been like having to take somebody to the mat over any of these things. But like,
no,
that is kind of weird. I don't like the way that's phrased either. We should cut it.
And I think the only kind of pushback, because I'm like, it's like the GM and the editor.
It's him. He gets the pushback.
Well, like what I'm saying, like as far as like as a note on something to take out, the only pushback I've ever given is, all right, I will double check if we can edit around that, but we might need to like re-record one section, so let's just double check and then I will tell you. But I don't think there's ever been a time we've had to do that. But like I said, that's the only pushback I've ever given, of just like, hey, heads up, we can do this. I just have to figure out what we actually need to do to cut that, and if there's anything. But I'm in favor of doing it. I'm just letting them know, like, cool, like I will do that. I guess I should point this out when we were talking about earlier how I didn't realize I was into body horror. I did not. It's not that I was like, oh my god, what is this?
He just
thing?
started
I've never
describing things.
I just legitimately thought this was just a normal like pathway everyone's brain took to stuff. and it's just all made logical sense for me, and especially too because like the whole thing I was trying to do with like the setup of the storyline, and this is kind of spoilers, but you find it out in the first few episodes, like the opening kind of hook for them is like you're all in a town of like superpowered teens, and you're finding out that teens are going missing with superpowers. You don't know what, and you slowly start to find out like they're being like put in coma beds, and like their powers are being stolen.
Every bed is technically a coma bed.
And so in my head I was just like, all right, well, let me do something where like people's powers start going out of control. And that, like, so the first one was like with the boy labyrinth, and then there was one where it's like somebody with like density control and shifting powers, like she couldn't control like all the parts of her body were like a different kind of density, so she's like falling in the ground, but then her lungs are filling up with like dirt and things like that. And then there was another thing of like somebody that could like multiply themselves, but they were multiplying too many versions, so they were making like bad copies. And then like in the actual episode recording, because this was episode 4 that this all started coming out in, Shannon was like, Joel, what's up with all the body horror stuff? And I was like, ha ha ha. I went home that night and Googled body horror.
An interesting Google search, a risky one.
Because I was just like, I don't really know what Shannon's talking about with this. I mean, I know that it's getting weird, but I did not know it was like a specific thing on its own. And
you're all Cronenberg Jr. up in there.
So it wasn't like a thing where like I hadn't like told them like, oh, by the way, I'm gonna surprise you with it. I just was like, this isn't in everyone's head already. Y'all didn't think about, because like I had an idea for years about like a superhero mockumentary that I've kind of taken a lot of notes from, where it was all about like people losing their powers after years and the like horrible drawback it has to having superpowers. Like when you have them was bad, when you lose them it's bad, and it's more so. And so I just was like trying to explore, because there's a lot of I mean, yes, hero fantasies, but there's a lot of glorification of like superpowers solve everything and there's no drawback. It's like, that is a lie. Like there is no way that could exist in any kind of media. So
Mr. Fantastic can never get a haircut. It's weird.
Oh, really?
Well, I mean,
think about it.
Stretching.
I would prefer not to. It's also nice.
I
mean,
really
some
don't
of
want to think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like,
That's
oh,
the
it looks like the
show.
hour is up now. That's crazy.
Well, actually, I mean, the good thing is, and it's like part of it is because it's so for like I love body horror. I love
I
like
do
Junji
too.
Ito. I like absolutely love it. And it's fun to talk about for me, and it's fun to play around with it. But also like our show, it's fun. It's funny. It's like about just like teens and teen superheroes and like finding your place in the world. It's got a lot of heart, and there's a lot of like comedic aspects. It's not like 24/7 body horror. Um Although there's like a nice like little sprinkling on top of like the ice cream sundae of body horror, but it's again like maybe it never feels like too much to me, but again I've got a pretty
It's
high
just enough to
tolerance.
illustrate that superpowers are a curse.
They are a curse.
Like,
So, would you be interested in maybe introducing your characters at this point and kind of telling a little bit about them? And
Oh yeah, any of the actual content of the show.
Oh yeah. little details.
look,
no,
we pay
no,
as much
I'm
attention to the
loving
content
this
of the show.
conversation.
Well, good.
And I will probably be downloading and listening to your show, seeing as we have nowhere to go for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
It's
Lot of
a
episodes.
great way to pass the time.
Here, you start us off, Shelby, because the kind of the setup was that Paul and Shelby's characters were longtime friends, and then Shannon's character comes in like right at the beginning. So Shelby, you start us off.
Yeah, sure. So my character that I play is Alex Finch, and her main MO is she's just star student, like very positive, very enthusiastic, just trying her best, and it's a really fun character to play, like overachiever, like a lot of like anxiety, a lot of like things going on. And I one thing that we can talk about a little bit, and I'm sure that we'll get around to because I usually do, I accidentally just made myself in high school. I just did an oopsie, and then like y'all be careful with emotion, like what was that called?
Bleed.
Like,
Be careful about bleed.
Be careful
Like-
about bleed because Rutrow made myself.
It's the whole
But
show.
yeah, so basically Alex is she's a like just a star student, kind of sheltered, and grew up in Heavendale as childhood friends with Paul's character Jerry, who is kind of the complete opposite of Alex. So Paul, tell me
And
a
then
little
for
bit
anyone
about Jerry.
familiar with Mask, Shelby had started Alex as the Beacon playbook, which is
Right.
which is very like it, which is like the gung ho. I don't have
It's like
any powers.
Robin.
Yeah, I don't have any
Yeah.
powers. I shouldn't be
Like-
here, but oh boy, am I excited!
Exactly, like no superpowers, but just like so ready to be here and so ready to do some good. And it's a very fun archetype to play for sure.
Well, so I play Jerry, who is Sad Sack, our most merchandisable character because he has no face.
Easiest to draw, very easy to
He
draw.
wears a brown paper bag with a frowny face on as his superhero costume. It gets upgrades later, but right? See, it's wonderful.
Yeah.
So I play Jerry,
Upgrades.
and I play Alex's best friend, and we have already talked about this, but we are low key very jealous about their long time
Extraordinarily.
friendship. I'm furious. Like, where do you get that? You can't rent
I
that.
know. Do you? I like total tangent, but when I see people who are like, "Yeah, we've been friends since kindergarten," I'm like, "How?"
It's
I want one.
I have one I have one in real life friend that I've been like best friends with since I was 10, and they've all actually met. It's Ian. Like
Yeah, he's the best. Yeah,
Oh,
brag
wow.
about it.
That's what I'm
Ian's
saying. Like I have
great.
like one, and
Hi,
I have like
Ian.
How?
it's lucky. Well, honestly, it's lucky. That's all it is, because your friends in elementary school specifically are only your friends because they live on your street or your parents work together and you'll see each other enough. And so it's very rare that it happens to be that like there's like location convenient and actual interest.
Gosh, no, like later on in the series though, in Critical Bits, we have some episodes like about, again, like it's all very like interesting, like exploring like the characters' relationships, and high key jealous of like their, and I'm like Paul's my actual friend. Like I like
We've only known
Paul.
each
Like
other,
we've
like, a
known
year
each
and a
other
half, 2 years. It's
exactly
not-
since whenever the release date of episode 1 of Critical Bits was.
It's
But
not our entire
it's-
childhoods.
Yeah,
That'd be so
exactly.
cool. Like I would be into that.
Yeah.
So Jerry
Jerry,
is again the opposite of Alex, more or less. I play the delinquent playbook, which is essentially the guy out back, the superhero out back smoking. A young Deadpool is kind of a weird way to play it, but like characterization wise, they kind of fit in the playbooks fit into archetypes. But I also just built me from high school. I have Jerry. My fears are Jerry's. Jerry's fears are mine. This is again something you should really be careful for. It's a huge amount of fun. But
I'll explain why later with an episode called Tom Vault.
Yeah, it's It turns out, if Jill knows my fears, Jill knows Jerry's fears.
And we talk about this. Joel
and
doesn't just
versa.
like psychologically prey on us for entertainment. We've like had conversations about this. And you didn't even mention Jerry's powers though.
Oh yeah, so but Jerry actually does have powers, and his sort of objective is, oh, my friend's doing something stupid, I should go make sure that she doesn't die from it. So Jerry has an emotional control power and can neutralize other powers. So a good pairing with the Beacon playbook. So it's like, oh, you don't have any powers. It's okay. They're also just somebody now. Please don't die from this.
Yeah, and then just
the ultimately like the opening arc of Jerry and where he goes from there is, well, you should listen to all the show.
And just a side note for anyone interested in playing Mask as a player, not a GM, just go pick the delinquent and get power neutralization, and you will make your GM keep being like, mother, come on. Like,
if you want to speed run a game of Masks, like go power neutralization.
this guy does all this cool stuff.
I just snapped my fingers and you can't do any of the things you just came up with. Oh, how long did you spend planning this? Oh, that's funny.
That's a really good pun name, but yeah, we're gonna hit it with a rock.
I play Kim Bennett, who is the Reformed playbook, which is a former villain who's trying to be a hero that's like built into the playbook, like the class. And the ability I chose was Ferrokinesis, the ability to control like metal and magnetism, like Magneto powers. And something I really wanted to do with this character was play someone who had a potentially very, very strong power, but who was super low key, basically a coward, would always run from danger, would run from conflict or confrontation, and try to see how that played out in the show. It was really fun. And I base Kim on myself a whole lot. I'm not a coward, but I think a lot of her
I'm not a coward. I put all my fears on the internet.
There are a lot of aspects. Well, it's also too like I'm a film critic, and I thought it would be funny to make it where Kim has never seen any movies and doesn't care about media, and just like references go over her head. I think that's something too that I should mention real quick about the show, is that we really like failure and leaning into failure and making min-max characters so that there's a lot of potential to fail, and not necessarily leaning into being heroic or like a power fantasy. I think it's much more for a comedy show, especially. It was very fun. I kept accidentally stabbing Jerry in the back with knives early on, and you would turn my powers off, and stuff would like crush me, and
Jerry got punched in the face so much. It's for a few episodes we don't do it, but the majority of our episodes, our end tagline is punch Jerry in the face, solely because it wasn't like the first episode we started saying that, but it got to the point where like, oh man, Jerry, did you get punched in the face again doing nothing? Yeah,
it's like every episode for the first like 8 episodes or something. It's something ridiculous like that.
Have a gimmick.
I think you're very marketable. And I don't have any set character. But as far as making myself in the game, I did not come up with this character, but but as soon as it got breathed into existence, I did just put 13-year-old me in there, because Shelby is a monster. I just want to say that to everybody.
I am
in the best way. Like, I'm happy about it, but
also
thank
you,
Joel.
A monster is a terrifying person. And like in Powered by the Apocalypse in general, it's a lot of collective collaborative storytelling, so the GM necessarily doesn't have to map everything out. And then so they were like, well, we have like a laptop, we want someone to like check it out. And I was like, well, Shannon or Kim, you probably know someone called like the shopkeeper or some crap like that, where he'll do jobs for a price, but it's definitely the price is usually greater than what you get out of it. And then I was like, but for Alex, you probably have like a nerdy friend or maybe like a little brother. And she was just like, oh yeah, my little brother, Brantley Finch. And named him Brantley. And then I immediately, Brantley, it's funny too. Like,
Step 1.
a bunch of people like the character voice I do for him gets lower over time because I forgot how to do the original voice. But like Brantley starts out as like the worst, very toxic Fortnite playing, like shit talking 13-year-old little brother. And then I love it. At first I hated the character, but then after a few episodes when he like slowly changes over and like becomes like has people be nice to him and realizes he's a piece of shit and starts to change. He is now hands down my favorite NPC to run. And I also 100% that is young me. Well, one of the things because I was like, yeah, he's 13, he's very overweight, he just eats a bunch of corn dogs and plays video games all the time. And then afterwards we were like, oh, we hope no one thinks I'm attacking anybody. I was like, oh, that's me. I didn't have this character planned. And you're like, yeah, what's this shitty 13-year-old that spends all his time on the internet? I was like, well, his name is Joel Reyes. So that's what I just kind of made Brantley like a very exaggerated, shittier version of me. But as the show has progressed, especially because we just put out episode 35, which is the second to last episode of our 5th arc of the show. And so at this point in arc 5, the character Brantley gets the most like consistent screen time with the rest of the people.
Yeah.
And like, oh boy, I've just been having so much fun playing him. He's very fun, and it's a real good foil to everybody. Like, and so that's where kind of like my bleed came in. Well, everything in the show, because it's a world where no parents are good. And so you can guess how I feel about my parents as the GM and creator of this world. Yeah, but it is very fun though, playing Brantley. But everybody in the very beginning hated him, and you should not, because we had a few fans be like, yeah, my friend said they liked it, but they hate Brantley. I was like, your friend is right. Tell your friend that they're right, and Brantley eventually does get better. But
oh, it's so fun to do the brother and sister banter though. Like
y'all are really good
from the
There's
beginning.
like a great
it's
chemistry
really
in
fun.
that with that dynamic with y'all.
Mhm.
And we always have to eventually just interrupt it and change the story.
'cause
during
Shelby-
the
Shelby
show.
and I will
we would
just
riff into
go.
oblivion. It is dangerous.
So I do have another question kind of about not exactly the game itself, but you're making me feel pretty inadequate here with all your fancy mic setups, and I just have this thingy. Y'all sound way better than I do. What made you want to do an actual play podcast over like a different format, like maybe releasing videos or streaming it on like Twitch or something? What was the desire for podcast?
Yeah, well, for me, because I kind of was like the one to approach everybody. My first one obviously is the love of tabletop role playing game, but was Taz, in particular the Adventure Zone, and like, especially the balance arc. Like, ooh boy, so much of it like got to me and was so good and compelling. And I'm not trying to spoil anything, but like the very like. Because there's like the finale arc and then the second to last arc before that. The second to last arc, I was like, oh god, this is so good. It's been like building up this for like years. And then the final arc, which is like 3 or 4, maybe 5 episodes, I bawled throughout the entire thing, and in a great way. Like, but like it was just like, oh my god, this is so good. This is so compelling. Like I've been following these characters for however many years now, and like it wasn't like oh, I feel like I'm at the table with them. I'm like, I feel like I'm invested in this show and the story. And so I'd mentioned this, I used to run a sketch show where it was like half stand-up, half film sketches called Ladies Night. I ran it for 3 years with 2 other people. And that time, me and the 2 other people that ran the show produced over 100 short films. And so I just was kind of tired of sketch. I didn't want to do stand-up anymore because I was just tired of the stand-up grind. And I really wanted to produce something, but it really was like Taz made me just be like, God, this is so good. And especially going for an actual play versus streaming. Actual play, like I heavily edit our show. Like I make sure there's sound effects, like Shannon and I were talking about at the very beginning, like sound effects, background music. I cut down most all like rules talk. Like if I'm like, oh, what do you want to do? And then there's like 2 minutes of us being like, well, what about this? What about this? And like, I cut out all that, and it goes from me saying, what do you want to do, to Shelby being like, oh, I directly engage and I got a 10. Like, I want it to be tight. I want it to go fast. No offense or nothing against anybody that has a show that has a lot of that in there. Some people like it as a fan. Some people like it as a creator. for the four of us, we just decided, and there's somebody, he produces Rude Tales of Magic and Fun City Ventures, but he recently coined the phrase narrative play podcasting versus actual play, and where he was saying, it's Taylor Moore is his name, he was saying that like more so that like a narrative play podcast would kind of fall under us. So like Rude Tales, we're like, we heavily edit, we make sure it's cinematic, we cut out a lot of crosstalk, and we cut down other things. And then actual play is kind of more so follow on, like we hit record, I went through and threw some filters on, and then I put the episode up online. And so, and you definitely, that's also for streaming itself, that's kind of what you got to do. You don't, you can't go back and edit after the fact, but like we wanted to really control what we were putting out there and make sure that it was like really well polished, and just the production, because Shannon and I both come from film production background, so both of us really enjoy that aspect of it.
And I my like big video essay series is about what's called a parasocial relationship, where you are a fan of someone and you feel like they're your friend, and I really wanted to avoid that. Like I wanted people to get invested in the characters and get invested in the story as if like this is a universe that we're building. And I really liked Chapo Trap House has a Call of Cthulhu series that they do as like a 20s radio play that's very, very heavily produced. When they did a live show, Chris was doing like live sound effects and playing the theremin live. Like the production value they put in is insane. And it's just like a comedy show. There's no drama or like emotional stakes to it. But I was very, and Joel agreed with me, I was very, very much like, you have to edit this. I do not want to just like record us playing and have people feel like they're at the table with us, like you said. And we all like the Adventure Zone a lot, because I prefer very heavily produced, sort of like this is a story we're telling versus like I'll just come hang out with people, because I have like a whole thing about that going into it. That was a lot of conversations that we had about it. And I think all four of us were on board with like, we want to have fun at the table, and that's important, and we all want to be comfortable, but we're putting on a show. We want the end product is what matters more, rather than like, well, it has to be super fun for the players and that's all that matters, which is valid, but that was not our perspective at all.
Yeah, and that was a big part of
go ahead. I have a ton of fun doing it.
No, what I have fun doing is making a good show.
Yeah.
That is fun. No, and I think that was a big part of our session 0 too, is saying like, what kind of show do we want to make, like what do we want to be like? And it's like, because there's some shows I listen to because I want to learn how to play a game system. Like I've looked for Blades in the Dark games to learn how to play Blades in the Dark, or like Blades in the Dark actual play podcasts. And we don't play masks good. We do our best. We're trying. We use it as a framework, but if you want to learn how to play masks, it's
go listen to
don't ask
Comics.
me. Yeah, Protein City
Comics
is great. They're a great podcast, and they play by the rules.
Yeah, and it's not saying like don't only listen to us. You don't like rules. It's just like, and that was another thing we had in our sessions. We just were like, we can follow the rules. I'm not 100% married to all of them.
Fought for D&D second edition advanced with encumbrance
tooth and
components.
But yeah, but I mean, that was just
that'll be boring.
And I'm all about rule of cool. Like it's just like, can you justify why you want to do this crazy thing? I don't need you to pull up a rule sheet or like a stat that tells me you can do it. Just be like, cool. Just justify me in a role play why you're pulling this off. And most of the time, if you do something crazy and over the top, I will not be like, well, it's too hard to do. You get a negative. I'm like, cool, +1. I want that to go. That's cool as shit. I really do. I think that Mask lends itself to that. Yeah. And Powered by the Apocalypse in general, I feel like, really, really lends itself to kind of, if you want to go rules light or as far as the rules, but especially too, because like for the Beacon, there's a thing called drives about like where it's like you're trying to do stuff. We've never paid attention to that. The Reformed has a bunch of stuff.
But you did do all of them.
Well, the Reformed has a bunch of stuff about like other villains that you owe things to and who you're indebted to. And
I wrote stuff out, and then I just went with whatever story stuff you had.
But like I said, it's not a thing where I'm not like, oh, Mask sucks, you shouldn't follow the rules. It's like, no, literally, whenever I ran a few smaller games and then like an extended campaign where if it was a podcast, I would have dubbed that we got to like a full season of it before I stopped.
Not us, with other people.
Yeah, this was the other people. Yeah. But like I played that one very legitimate, rules-based oriented, and it was fun. But that's why whenever I got to the podcast, I was like, no, this is a narrative. This is like, I want to tell a story Like you're not in a writer's room for a TV show and being like, but the main character actually hasn't gotten the flaming swords yet to level 2, so he can't really do that attack. And it's just like, cool, dude, you can leave because this is a fun story. But like I said, there are other people, and I like going back to Frozen City, they play by the rules to a T, and they're also very story driven. So they're not saying that they are exclusive.
You can do both.
You can do both, but just for us, it's just more like let's riff, let's go in the minute, and just kind of not pay attention.
Yeah.
The actions have their own consequences.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's something about Powered by the Apocalypse in general, right? Is that you can give someone anything. We do not really care about money. Kim has a bunch of it. She offers people $500 to go away. Sometimes it works.
That's a reoccurring move.
It's a running gag.
Yeah.
And Joel will be like, excuse me, didn't you already spend this much today? And it's just like, let it.
Yeah.
You know, because I think we also, it's a lot of it is trusting each other for me to not just try to use money to fix every problem or to not try to overplay it or like dominate each other in the game. We couldn't do it this way if certain kinds of people were playing with us.
And just as a GM to these 3 players, I've told us this plenty of times on and off mic, but I'll say it again. I love how good y'all are at playing your characters and not metagaming. And don't get me wrong, there's been a few bonus episodes that we did where I told them, I was like, this is the end. I need us all to get here. So yes, there's a little bit of metagaming to like know, like, oh, well, okay, well, he said at one point there's going to be like a left turn at a corner. I'm going to take that. I'm not going to ruin the show. But like there's a bunch of stuff that all of you know out of game where you could very easily just be like, oh, well, my character on a whim decides to do this. It's like, no, I would literally never think of that. And even though that could jump us ahead like 10 episodes, I'm just not going to do it. Like a really good example.
Why would I investigate this plot? Come
on.
A
really good example is the beginning of Arc 5. I do throw a lot of stuff at them. I have a
we don't catch any of it.
Very hyperactive brain. I for sure have dyslexia. I do not know if I have ADHD. I've told my therapist, told me she can't legally diagnose me, but she thinks I should go get the test, and the healthcare system is awful. So like I do throw a lot of stuff at the beginning of Arc 5. Like I was like, all right, y'all can just do whatever you want. Go follow. You got a bunch of plot lines, and then because of the bonus episode Spider Day, Paul was talking about there's a canon portal to hell in the park of our town, and then by the end of the first episode, and this isn't spoiling anything because episode 28 is literally called The Fun Bunch Goes to Hell because the team name is The Fun Bunch. It's about them spending a whole episode debating on if they should go to hell or not, constantly saying, no, we're not going to go to hell. Then they went to hell. Like they went through, like, and so it's, like I said, there's so many other things that could have happened. There's a bunch of other storylines that they kind of knew out of game, but none of them like forced it. It was like a fun narrative push of how we got to the fact they like went through an active portal to hell, and then we spent a whole episode there like after that. And so it is very fun. And I do think that if you're going to start a podcast, you really need to find a good group dynamic. And like I said, with the 3 of us, it's so easy to play off of each other. And I know a big appeal of the show, because like I said, we're not trying to do a parasocial angle where you feel like you're a friend at the table, but you can definitely well, you can tell that like just the rapport.
Friends at the table is really good. We're not.
I said friend, not friends.
It was implied. It's weird.
Also, yeah, I mean they like whatever. You're a good show. I like you. But so I think it's just like a lot about that is like the dynamic that we bring as a group, especially too because like our show is way more character and narrative focused instead of like the big stories are focusing on like how good we are at the system. And I think it really just kind of goes back to the 3 of you are very adaptive players and are very quick on your feet, and will just kind of trust me to go with anything. But I, on that other hand, can trust y'all to where whenever I say like you do whatever you want, like you are going to do whatever you want, and you're not just pushing it. And so it's I just wanted to compliment you as a GM. You're the favorite people I've ever run a game for.
Oh,
thank
well,
you.
Same goes to you, because again, Joel's not kidding that he was like, okay, do whatever you want. And we say he didn't bring that up. We just said, we're going to go to hell. And Joel's like, okay, you do. And created like the hell, like just did a whole, you were like, Joel is one of the most, you were so talented at improvising things like that. So it's
very adaptive.
Yes, it is. And again, we can everyone in here can just play off of each other into crazy just wild results.
Well, and I think that is a perfect point to start wrapping things up. So the last question that I really have for you all is, where can people find you? Where can people find your podcast in the future when this is all gestures and everything, when this is all over? You know, are there any conventions that y'all will be going to? And where can people find you individually on social media?
Yeah, I can start for the actual show itself. Criticalbitcast.com or criticalbitcast on Twitter. I obsessively, anytime I start a new project, I make sure I can have the same handle and website URL, everything across the board. So literally criticalbitcast.com, or that's going to be on any of the actual social handles. And then the website, I keep it updated. All the links to the episodes are there. Links to our bonus stuff we've done is all up there. And
all
we're very
the beautiful
active
fan art.
Yeah, we have a lot of fan art. We're
it's
very
so
active
good.
on Twitter, and then we do have a active fan Discord that is run that we don't keep public. Like, we'll post links to that, but we kind of make you try to look for it a little bit, because bots can get in, spammers, and then just like, we don't
Please
want
come
weird
talk
people.
to people who like the show about the show.
Okay, let me rephrase that. We want weird people. We don't want shitty people.
And we're on like iTunes, Spotify, like all of the normal
Yeah.
podcast distribution places.
If as far as conventions, if the future times happen, we don't
Never
have
a
it
guarantee.
confirmed. I did put in a couple of submissions to try to get shows at Gen Con. I do not know if we're going to get them, but even if we don't have live shows at Gen Con, all four of us are going to go just to kind of hang out.
If Gen Con happens.
That's what I'm saying. If it happens.
Well,
And
if
then,
it happens, I will see you there.
yeah. And then also, if it happens, Dragon Con, we do have a live show at that, but that's also if Dragon Con happens.
If it happens.
which is in Atlanta.
Atlanta's Mardi Gras.
They're
And
Mardi Gras.
I love
Shannon,
Dragon Con.
you want to tell them about Con Carolinas?
Oh God, I do a lot of conventions. I'm the track director for Con Carolinas in Charlotte. I'm the new media track director, which is in late May, and as of now, we're going ahead with it. But again, I don't know. Like, there's a whole lot of circumstances around that I have no control over. So we'll see. I always do. Like, I'm planning to be at like Southern Fried Gaming in Atlanta, Monsterama in Atlanta, Atomicon in Charlotte. I do like a ton of conventions every year, but who knows if any of these are happening. Normally just around the Southeast. Sometimes they'll come with me, and sometimes I go alone and just talk about film theory, or sometimes I do a tabletop comedy show. You never know. But you can find me on Twitter at Plenty of Alcoves. You can see my series on parasocial relationships by searching like Fake Friends Parasocial. That's the name of it. And again, I'm on Struggle Session, which is at Struggle Sesh. And if you go on YouTube and type like H Bomber Guy Scanline, you can find some stuff that I did with him as well.
And then Strucci Movies is your actual channel name on YouTube, right?
Yes. And there's like a whole bunch of other stuff on there. There's a lot of it. I've been doing it for 5 years, so there's a lot of videos.
Oh, actually, a plug on that. If anyone is interested in checking out a show and wants like kind of a visual aspect to it, Shayna did a really cool. What is it? What is it?
It's like an animatic. It's like a visual novel style animatic of like little of our characters with like lights, like basic animation on it, because it was an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah, but they did that for the whole first episode. It's actually been a lot of people found out about the show because of that and then got into it afterwards. Like I said, we only have the first one because I remember when Shannon first started, they're like, yeah, this can take like a week or two. And it was like 2.5 months of a lot of intensive work. So we have not done any sense. But like I said, that's a really
video's
cool,
great though.
Really cool thing to check out on Strucci Movies channel.
Yeah. You can find me on Twitter at Shelby Lee. That's just Shelby Lee with a P instead of a B. And I am at any conventions that Critical Bits is at. I'll follow these guys around. I've got an upcoming podcast, which is my true passion project that I will never shut up about. And that is Jingle Jangle, a Riverdale fan cast that I'm doing with Joel Ruiz. And you can follow that on Twitter at JingleJangle420, hashtag JingleJangle420. It's incredible. The only podcast about the only good show, Riverdale. But yeah, otherwise I'm just follow me on Twitter. I'm around.
I do stand-up comedy around Atlanta, again, pending public events ever again. I'll show up with these guys to events as the Critical Bits crew. Shannon and I and we're working together on Critical Pits, an olive fan cast.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the olives, they're delicious.
A culinary podcast about olives.
Amazing.
Ooh, a culinary podcast. That's a good.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's
We
gonna
were
be a
actually
little
for real,
script.
like learning a lot about olives and trying
Yeah.
to schedule like real guests who know about like olive cultivars and olive oil and stuff.
Yeah.
We're recording our first 2 episodes of that next week, or it will have been recorded by the time this goes out. So
Welcome to the crypto.
I guess
future.
I guess I should plug the Spider Day stuff we talked about. So yeah, I am
yeah, that's
doing.
right.
So in April 17th of last year, I put out a bonus episode, which I think had around 33 to 36 guests. It was split between 10 sessions that I GM'd all of them, and then cut it up into a 3.5-hour long bonus episode. That led to me then doing another project called Seasons, which is a self-contained 6-episode miniseries. You can go find that at seasonsminiseries.com, and that's using Monster of the Week, and it's got 16 players split between 4 groups, and it's 13
and then they
sessions
all
in
cross
total.
over.
Yeah, it's 13 sessions in total, and they like crisscross, like the groups get jumbled up. It's a really crazy non-linear narrative story with like you're gonna feel like you have no clue what is happening for 4 episodes out of the 6. And then when you hit episode 5, you're gonna be like, "Oh, holy shit!" Because I'm and this is a bragging thing. Like I'm not as been as proud as like a solitary like project that I've done. And so that one, like I said, season miniseries is great. And then I am in the process. I only have two more out of 10 sessions to record for Spider Day 2, the real story of Spider Day, which I believe is going to have 44 characters in this one, which
How
is a
do
prequel
you
to Spider
do
Day
that?
1. And so this one is going to be around 3.5 to 4 hours, but that is going to debut on April 17th. And we're going to be doing, so you can download that on April 17th, but we're also going to be doing a live listen on our Twitch channel. Because what we did last year, and we're doing it again this year, we did a charity streaming event weekend for Covenant House, Georgia, which is they have other chapters, but the Atlanta branch it's for like, like LGBTQ focused youth. They, service other youths. It's like youth homelessness, helping rehousing, job programs. And then they also do a lot to fight human trafficking. So we raised money for them last year. We're doing it again this year. So April 17th, 18th, and 19th, we'll have a series of one-shot games being played and run by various other friends and other podcasters. And it's all going to raise money for Covenant House, Georgia. And because like last year, it was just, I kind of came up with the idea. I was like, we have like 33 people as a guest on this episode. That's a lot of people that are gonna be pushing and sharing stuff. We could like turn this into a charity event because I'm already gonna have a bunch of buzz, and it went over so well and it was so fun. A lot of work. I mean, as
yeah, it was. I helped run it. It was a hell of a lot.
gosh.
but it was super fun and very rewarding. We're gonna do this again this year. So like I said, check us out. It's once again twitch.tv/criticalbitcast. But we'll be up there all weekend, and then all the games get recorded and put up on our YouTube channel later. But like, go check that out. And then once again, if you want, it is kind of funny, but it's way more of a drama-driven one. But seasonsminiseries.com, if you kind of want to get a sense of some of the stuff we put out as far as the actual play events. That's only 6 episodes. The final episode is close to 4 hours, but it is a like full wrap-up of the entire story. And once again, I'm very proud of it.
Did anyone not plug yet? Paul, did you say where we can find you?
Plug.
Did you say
You
Twitter?
can find me at #subtext on Twitter. The word hashtag.
At
Yeah. I was about to say, you need to tell everyone that it's actually the word. And
It won't let you do it. Anyway, it's complicated for no reason. I'm trying to remain obscure, I guess, while appearing on it. No, please don't follow me. I say weird stuff. I've talked about other things.
Well, thank you all so much for coming to hang out and talk about your podcast. This has been really fun and has personally made me very interested in Critical Bits. So I'm hoping that it does the same for everyone in the audience.
well, I can't wait. Well, to wake up, I can't wait to welcome you to our boy labyrinth.
Oh God.
You
It
have
would've
to
been
stop
better if I
saying
could've
boy
said
labyrinth.
Yeah.
Please no.
Oh, God.
Um,
Well, thank you.
Some announcements before we sign off. This weekend is our CouchCon event. So for Friday, so technically tomorrow, by the time this airs, we're kicking off everything with a one-shot 5e pirate themed called Booty Island, the Curse of Booty Island.
I get it.
So check that out. That's going to be airing, I believe, at 8 p.m. EST. So check that out. That's going to kick off our whole CouchCon virtual convention, which is happening Friday night through Sunday. And we're accepting bits, subs, and donations for Doctors Without Borders. It's a big event that's going to be across 4 different channels. It's us, it's Heroes Without Limits, it's Wandering DM, and Total Party Chills. So keep an eye out. The schedule should already be out on our Twitter if you're interested, so go check that out. We've also got a wonderful virtual vendor hall full of crafters and small businesses, and many of them are offering some really great discounts, so check that out as well. And besides that, join us for all our regular games. We do have our schedule down below in the description area, so if you're interested in seeing more of my face, maybe, I am on here frequently. But yeah, with that, we can sign off and say goodnight. So bye.
Bye.
Bye.